Listen up. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in this podcast belong solely to the podcast participants, and not to any participant's employer, organization, committee, or other group or individual. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. You know, for fun. So lighten up and enjoy. Oh, Stomping Jen. Hello.
Hi.
Good to see you.
My brain is always working, I swear to fucking God.
Why?
I don't know. I just wrote down notes for our guest.
Oh,
for
okay.
Later.
Well,
Okay.
who is our guest?
Dan.
Dan Regner of
We're going to butcher his name.
Western Mass Pinball Club.
Yes.
I have many questions.
I have so many questions.
I was really excited when we booked Dan. I'm a child of the 80s arcade scene, and there were lots of pinball machines in arcades when I used to go to them. So I've spent a lot of time in my life playing these pinballs, these machines, Stomping Jen. So I have.
Were you a pinball wizard?
I was not. I was merely an apprentice.
Oh, okay.
I never rose to the level of wizard.
All right.
So, but we're gonna talk to Dan all about this world of pinball, and people are gonna learn a lot of cool stuff, I think.
Okay.
Are we ready?
We're totally ready.
All right. Let's hit our paddles and get ready to whack some balls.
Soft Serve Podcast.
Creamy, delicious ideas without the creepy truck.
Don't do
Stomping
it. Don't do it.
Jen. We're here to talk about pinball with our new
You have
friend.
to sing like The Who.
I can't do that.
Why not? Roger Daltrey?
Oh, I'm a terrible singer.
Oh my God.
Well, without further ado, let's say hello to Dan Regner. I said it right that time. From Western Mass Pinball Club. Hello, Dan.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. I was super excited when Stomping Jen here told me we were going to talk to you because, like I said before the intro music, I grew up in like the 1980s arcades, and I played tons of pinball when I was a kid. So I just am attracted to this.
Yeah.
I'm really excited by it. And when I heard there was a Western Mass Pinball Club,
Oh yeah.
immediately
I was like, oh no, we need to talk to these people.
my brain kind of exploded. So I just wanted to kind of ask you, how did you get into this world of pinball? And if you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself, that would be cool too.
Sure. So the Western Mass Pinball Club is actually, it was born from myself and three friends. Andy, Keith, and Ed. And I met them through pinball, and I can get into that backstory. But we had this idea, which wasn't a new idea. There's actually a place in Connecticut called The Sanctum, which they named themselves after The Shadow, which was that horrible movie with one of the Baldwins.
Oh yeah.
And there was a pinball machine based off the movie, which is actually a very good pinball machine off a horrible movie. So they opened up a spot down in Meriden, Connecticut. I want to say at least 7-8 years ago. It could have even been a little more. And they're in an old warehouse building. You would never know they were there if you drove past this building. But they kind of came up with this sort of pinball co-op put together by a few people with their own private collections. And we're friends with a lot of those guys. And we came up with the idea to do the same thing up in this area because really, like, we all love pinball, and pinball it's seeing a resurgence, but there's not a lot of it in Western Mass at all. You know, so we kind of wanted to make this really cool sort of underground spot. We're basically the Fight Club of pinball.
Nice.
Now, did you meet these guys that you opened Western Mass Pinball with by playing? Like you met them kind of as a player and they were just fellow players, or did you have relationships that went back before that?
So I met them through playing. There's a league called the New England Pinball League. I think their website is like NEPL. It might be .org. I'm not sure off the top of my head. But the New England Pinball League is, I want to say there's about 18 locations across Mass, Vermont, Maine, and New Hampshire. And there's probably 400 to 500 players total.
Oh, wow.
And the league runs 3 times a year, and it's 8 weeks each session. And then they do a finals of 100 players. So there was the closest. I moved to Belchertown 10 years ago. And the closest NEPL location here was up in Greenfield at a place called Mystic Pinball, which actually unfortunately closed during COVID. COVID killed a bunch of the pinball spots in Massachusetts, mainly more towards Boston, because that's where a bunch of them were. But Mystic was an unfortunate casualty from COVID. But the closest place was either Mystic or like some spot off 495. And it was like an hour drive to get to any of them. And I just didn't want to do that every week. And then one of the other club members here now, Andy, he lives in Ware, and he had a bunch of pinball machines in his basement, and he's been kind of tied in with NEPL for a little while. He does a lot of their IT work and stuff. So he opened his house, his basement, as an NEPL location. And as soon as I saw that, I'm like, oh my God, it's like a dream come true. It's 10 minutes from my house. I can go and play and play in league. Finally, it was like a dream come true. I've been collecting pinball machines on and off since the early 2000s. I've actually gotten out of the hobby completely on 2 different occasions.
These are big machines, and so when you're collecting them, like how do you store them?
It's really one of the worst hobbies I think any one person can get into, because of the size of the games, the weight of the games. Each game is like close to 300 pounds. And the prices are just, COVID really made pinball prices go like through the roof crazy. But even before that, it's a pricey thing to get into. And, pinball machines, they break and they break a lot. And if you don't have any technical know-how, you could be kind of like, down the river without a paddle kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's a tough hobby to get into initially until you start meeting other people. And you guys would be surprised how many pinball collectors there are, even just in Massachusetts. It blew my mind once I kind of like discovered this world. Because when I bought my first pinball machine, I bought my first pinball machine in the early 2000s, and it was an Addams Family. And I can get into why I bought that. But I had this game, and I didn't know anybody in pinball. I did not know one other person that collected pinball machines. And after owning it for about a year, I kind of had like this freak out moment where I'm like, oh my God, if this thing breaks, I have no idea how to fix it. I don't know anybody. And I ended up selling the game just because I was just like paranoid at that point,
Yeah.
And since then I got back into the hobby after I kind of met people, years later that were into it and could help me with any little troubles that I might run into. And we moved to Belchertown. I got back into the hobby. I had about 7 games in our house. And then my wife was pregnant with our second child, and we weren't going into the basement anymore. We weren't playing them anymore. I'm like, why do I have all these expensive games in here that nobody's touching? And I freaked out and I sold everything again.
Oh no.
And then we decided to do this club, and now I'm up to like 25 games.
Wow.
And you're not in Andy's basement anymore, right? Have you?
No.
You've moved. Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about your location?
So we are in the Palmer Technology Center, which is in Three Rivers, downtown Three Rivers. It's like the old Tam Brands factory. So it's a massive complex. You wouldn't even know we were in there if you drove by it, kind of like the Sanctum in Connecticut. We don't really have any signage outside or anything like that. We have one of the old cafeteria spaces. So it's like a 4,200 square feet room. We painted it. We put new lighting in. Like it looks awesome. It was a dream for us, but it took a long time to get from where we started to where we are now. We've been here for 2 years. A year of that was basically a wash because of COVID.
Yeah.
So,
and
good thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Please finish.
The only good thing about COVID, if there was a good thing about COVID, is that it allowed us to do like so many things to this place to really get it to where we always wanted it to be. But it would have been kind of tough to do if we hadn't been closed for, months and months and months. So,
yeah. How many games do you have in there?
So on the floor right now, we probably have a little over 60.
Wow.
And I mean, I'm in our back room right now. We have we're fortunate enough to have our main space, and then we have an office, and then we have like a little workshop kind of storage area in the back. So at one time we counted all our games in the back, including like the broken project games. And we were just over 100 games total under the roof. Do you have, which is insane.
Do you have technicians, or like, you have people as part of the club that know how to work on the machines?
So the four of us that put it together, we all have some level of technical ability. But one of the guys can actually do circuit board work. Okay. So, and that's like the biggest issue with pinball machines. If a circuit board has issues or needs components, I mean, you have to be able to do fine soldering and know what you're doing. And luckily we have Andy. Andy is he's our technical guru. If he can't fix it, it can't be fixed, Yeah. But without Andy, this place wouldn't even exist, because we would have tried to do this undertaking without him.
Do you do workshops on how to putter with motherboards and soldering, and workshops and teaching others how to fix the machine?
It's funny. So actually, that is one of the plans that we're going to try to do in the fall or winter. He's going to try to put some classes together for people who own pinball machines to come here, and he's going to, we're going to try to do like a basic, intermediate, and advanced level on like repairs and stuff. So because there's a need for it out there. Like I said, you would be surprised how many people actually own pinball machines.
Are there companies that you can call that will come in and repair them if you have a broken machine that you just can't fix yourselves?
There's a few like freelance people in the New England area that will do it. Like for circuit board work, a lot of them won't do house calls. You have to like drop the board off to them or mail it to them. But no, I mean, there's not a lot of people that will actually just go do like house call stuff for people. I don't know if it's just because like they're so intricate and it can take hours to even diagnose the issue. And I think it's too much of an undertaking for somebody to try to get into like that kind of business. I mean, obviously, like we're, the four of us, if we have a friend that has an issue, we're going to go out and try to help them. Or if it's a frequent, person that comes to the club, we've had that too, where they'll sit down and talk to Andy or one of us and try to, spitball their problem with their game. We've had people even bring their games here and have us try to fix them or let us fix them. And then they'll leave it here for a few weeks for people to enjoy before they take it back home.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's great because it kind of keeps, fresh stuff coming through the door.
I like it.
What?
It's like my like business mind is like, oh, we could do this revenue stream. You could do that revenue stream. You could do this. You could do that. Sorry.
How do you find the games that you bring into the club? Are there like trade magazines that advertise games for sale? Are there websites and you're looking for new and interest? Do you have to be actively out there looking, or do people find you? Like, how do you get the games?
It's funny. It's kind of like all those things. I mean, we've gotten games just from word of mouth. We've gotten games from obviously friends of ours that are in the hobby that are looking to sell a game. And we have people that'll kind of come to us first and go, hey, I'm going to get rid of this game soon. If you guys are interested, let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to put it up. There's a lot of games on Craigslist. There's a lot of games on Facebook. There's a few like pinball for sale marketplace ones. I had a game that I bought a few years ago. Actually, the game I talked about earlier, The Shadow, that the Sanctum named themselves after. One of those popped up on like a Ludlow trash to treasure kind of site. And a friend of mine that lives in Ludlow, he messaged me at 7 a.m. one morning and he's like, hey, is this a good deal? And I'm like, oh my God, tell them I will buy it right now.
Oh, wow.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's just sometimes those deals pop up and it's, they don't happen all the time, but they do. There's also a website called Pinside. So it's pinside.com. And that is probably the biggest pinball website in the world. There's thousands of people on there, and games, dozens of games go up for sale there every day. It's worldwide. So it's not often that you'll get a game that's within, your comfortable driving distance. But there actually is, it's a message board and there's a specific thread called, like New England for sale. So I always keep an eye on that. I have that bookmarked and that gets several posts a day. Like it's kind of it's a pretty active hobby and there's a lot of turnover. But the only bad thing is because of COVID and everybody was staying inside and nobody was going out, is that people started buying these games and people started selling these games for more money and people kept buying them. So it's like games that you used to be able to buy for $1,000 are now going for $2,500.
Oh my
it's like
God.
Everything it's crazy. And that's cheap. That's cheap these days. Games have kept some games have doubled and tripled in price now.
Wow.
Are you kicking yourself for getting rid of all those games that you used to have?
A little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit. Although I'm sure my wife is happy because otherwise we'd be up to like 30 something games now.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Tell us a bit more about the collection of games that you have there in the club. I was on the website looking through the different types of games you have. I saw like an Aerosmith game, like, and I'm blanking, some like horror themed games. Can you just tell us about the different types of pinball machines that you have there in the club?
Sure. So we actually have, we're fortunate enough to have a really nice, diverse collection of games. When pinball first came out, they were electromechanical and they used score reels to tabulate the score. So EMs were basically made up until the early 70s. And then they went to what's called solid state, where they would actually have digital numeric displays. And solid state was basically through the 90s. But in the 80s, they started coming with alphanumeric displays. So they could display, letters and numbers, to the early 90s, where it was just like all alphanumeric. And then they made the switch over to what's called DMD, which is a dot matrix display. And that was the early 90s. That was like Terminator 2 and Addams Family were kind of like the first games to do that, where they could actually show, your score on there, and they could show animations and rule sets and everything else, whatever they could fit on that tiny little screen. And now you have games coming out with LCD monitors built into them, 10, 12 inch, sometimes like full LCD monitors, where now you have like, there's actually a new Guns N' Roses game that just came out last year from Jersey Jack Pinball. And that game, it's one of my favorites. I love it because I like the music, but that game has, it's like a full size, like flat panel TV in there, and it shows concert footage, and they actually have like 21 or 22 songs from the band. Oh, and wow. They took all this HD concert footage and they lip synced the footage to the album recordings, because they wanted it to sound, like the albums, but they wanted the look of the concert. And it's just amazing what they're doing with games these days.
Do those games become like destination games, like people in the community who follow pinball, like they seek them out? Like, okay, I know, for example, Western Mass Pinball Club just got the Guns N' Roses game. Like, I got to get there and play that. Like, do these games become like sought after experiences that people want to have and play?
Definitely. Like we just got a Rick and Morty. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the show.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a huge show.
Yep.
And we just got the game maybe 5 weeks ago, and that was a game made by a company called Spooky Pinball, which they are like the coolest people in the world. They're very small potatoes compared to some of the other pinball manufacturers, but they have like the most heart, you know. So they built Rick and Morty, and they only made 750 of them. That was wow. They couldn't make any more. That was just their licensing deal with Adult Swim, and that's how many they felt they could build comfortably in a year and a half, which was I think the window of their licensing or whatever.
Yeah.
So there's not a lot of Rick and Mortys out there. I mean, you're talking 750 for the entire world.
Wow.
We have one. So,
wow.
Yeah. And a lot of them went to home collections. So that's not a game that you can really run into and see on location at most places. So
that's amazing to me that companies are still making pinball machines, and that that there's this like really robust, engaged community around it. I think that's so awesome.
Oh yeah.
And I'm trying to think like how many new games like come out a year? Are there a lot? Are there a lot of people making pinball machines?
There's I'm trying to think how many like real manufacturers there are out there. There's you have Spooky Pinball, which they come out with maybe one game every year and a half, one title. You have a company called American Pinball, which is kind of the same thing. They only come out with a game every year and a half. You have Stern Pinball, which is like, they're the Godzilla of pinball manufacturers. They come out with at least 4 to 5 games a year. And they come out, I mean, they're worldwide. They make thousands of each title.
Wow.
And then you have Jersey Jack Pinball, which made Guns N' Roses. That's their last release. And they come out with a game maybe every 2 years. Stern has it down to a science, and they probably have at least 90% of the market share when it comes to new in-box games.
That is huge.
Are they all? Yeah. Are they all American, or are they all international?
No, they're all American. Actually, Spooky is in Wisconsin, and all 3 other manufacturers are in Chicago or just outside Chicago. Like Chicago was like the mecca of pinball manufacturing forever.
I've got to ask this. KISS has to have a pinball machine, right?
Yeah, KISS has 2. They have an old Bally game,
yeah,
and then they have a newer Stern game that probably came out, I don't know, 7-8 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say Bally is the name I associate with pinball machines.
Yeah,
is that
and Bally's gone.
They're the classic manufacturer.
Bally and Williams.
Okay.
Williams made some of the greatest games of the 90s. Back in the heyday. I'm 47, so I grew up in the arcades.
Yeah.
And I hated pinball. I was all about, Dig Dug and Mortal Kombat.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't even give the pinball machines my time of day. I thought it was a waste of money.
Yeah.
I'm 47, Stomping Jen.
You are 47. I was going to say my dad loved pinball. Anywhere we went to an arcade, he would check out the pinball machines.
And I remember I would come across pinball machines in like a pizza shop, like in town, or like, it seemed like there was always one like somewhere that you could find and play.
Well, most arcades, they only have like 1 or 2 machines. I think, does the Quarters have any pinball? They had a pinball machine, I think, at one point. And
I've never been there, but I have friends that have been there.
Yeah.
I know they had 2 or 3 games when they kind of first opened.
Yeah.
I don't know if they just didn't know how to maintain them, or they were just too much trouble. They don't have any pinball machines anymore.
Yeah.
They're strictly just video games now.
Yeah.
So Dan, you said when you were younger, you didn't much care for them. So what changed, and how did you get drawn into this world of pinball? Like what grabbed you?
It was Tommy, wasn't it? No, I'm just kidding.
It was actually Addams Family, which was the first game I ever bought.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm a police officer by profession. I've been in it for way longer than I would like to admit, and way longer than I would like to be in it. but back in the late 90s, when I first got on, I was on the midnight shift. And back then there wasn't a whole lot going on at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. So there was a hotel that a few of the district cars would kind of meet up and just grab a coffee or whatever. And they had a game room. So after shift, we'd stop back there and play a few games, and they had an Addams Family. So there'd be a few of us playing, and then somebody's going, "Oh, let's everybody throw $1 down on the glass, and we'll winner takes all," kind of thing. And the game, it's so magical. It was like the perfect combination of playfield shots and the voice calls that they used from the movie, and the artwork and the sound package. And it drew me in. And it was like a light bulb went off, and I'm like, this is awesome. I never cared about pinball before. And it's like, all of a sudden I love this. I love this game. And I really didn't care about any other games, but I loved that game. And so 2 years later, I bought one, and oh my God, I must have played that thing 1,000 times in a year. I just loved it. There's so many great things about that game. It's the most produced game ever made. They made something like 18,000 of them.
Wow.
It was just, it broke records as far as sales. It's insane.
Did they make it after the movies in the 90s or 2000s?
I feel like yes,
or is it earlier than that?
It came out right after, either parallel to or right after the first big movie.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they have it's like they ended up getting what was his name? Was it Raul Julia?
Yeah.
Is that his name?
Yes. Yeah.
He played. Yes.
Yep.
So they have a lot of his voice work in it and stuff. And oh God, the woman who plays his wife, she's a famous actress. I can't.
Angelica Houston.
Yeah, Angelica
Houston. It's just, oh my God, it's such a good game. It's such a good game. That's if I regret getting rid of any one game, it's that game.
It's fascinating. I'm listening to you, right? And it struck me. I never really thought about this before, but you were talking about the difference between a video game, and then you were describing the pinball machine. And piecing it together, it's like a multimedia art experience and a game put together. So I could see how that, you were talking about destination games and whatnot. There's so much to kind of put together that this world, sorry, I'm butchering what I'm trying to say, but just taking that concept of artistry and pop culture and commingling it into this and no game is exactly the same. You can never recreate the game that you've played before, because
and it's so kinetic and tactile, and you feel like you're part of the experience more than a video game. And believe me, I love video games. I have, Nintendo and PlayStation and Xbox. And I was a video game kid, and I've never grown out of it, much to, the chagrin of my wife. But my kids love it. They think I'm the coolest dad in the world because we have all these toys and stuff. But there's just nothing that can replicate the experience of pinball.
Yeah, I think you're onto something, Dan and Stomping Jen. There is that physical, tactile element. There's a physical thing inside the game moving around that you have to deal with, right? Like the ball
and the flippers
and then the paddles and the buttons. It's different than playing a video game where everything is just on the screen. Right. And then you said, Stomping Jen, you have the music, you have the pictures, you have the voice work, you have the lights, and it's truly this maybe it's the first kind of multimedia experience. Dan, were the older games that way too? Did they try to combine all those elements? Pinball's been around a long time, right?
Yeah. But they never really kind of reached their, I think, full potential until the mid to late 80s, where they really started trying to experiment with new things, they brought voices into the games in the 80s, and they started coming up with new mechanisms and new types of toys that would interact with the ball. And that's the reason why I love Addams Family. Like Addams Family has this one shot where you hit the ball and there's a magnet that grabs the ball, and it grabs the ball right in front of a box, and the box opens up and it's Thing, and the hand comes out and picks up the ball and brings it back into the box. What a feat of engineering. It's amazing. Like some of the stuff that they've come up with and still continue to come up with these days. Aerosmith, and we have another game here, Houdini. They both have kind of the same trick, but it's a great trick where it grabs the ball in one spot and then it catapults it across the playfield into a box that opens up. And you just see the ball just go flying, like Houdini. I think it throws the ball like it's like 1.5 feet distance. Oh my God. But it's so cool to see it happen in front of you. And like you made that happen, Yeah, I noticed on the website where you list the games that Western Mass Pinball Club has, like some of them have tutorials that you have to read. Those must be really complex games. We have some games here. I think you need a doctorate to try to figure it out. That's amazing. We have a Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, and that's by Jersey Jack Pinball, and they put out like a rule sheet, like a quick glance rule sheet, and it is the craziest thing you would ever see in your life. Like there's just no way you could even follow it, and it's so deep. It's kind of the fun of it, like sort of trying to figure it out. But there is something to be said about the games with like the simpler rule set where you can walk up or you can bring a friend over and go, okay, this is how you play it. It's this. Not every game needs to be over complex, but we do have players that come here and they want that deep rule set. They want to be able to try to dig into a game and master, certain modes, or try to work at getting to the wizard mode, which may take a half hour to get to if you're good enough to be able to play that long, which is not me. Yeah.
There's different modes.
That's amazing. Yeah. I didn't know that. So the longer you play like one of these games, it changes and the modes shift.
What does that mean?
That's crazy.
So okay, so there's a game, Jurassic Park, and it's a brand new. It's actually the third Jurassic Park pinball machine ever made, and it's a brand new one. It's one that just came out 2 years ago, and it's still in production today. We actually just got one a few weeks ago, and you can go into these games and you don't have to worry about modes or anything else. But once you start to try to like dig into the rule set a little bit, there's an actual map on the playfield that shows all the different paddocks, leading up to the entrance all the way up to the visitor center. And if you can make it to the visitor center, you'll start like a mini wizard mode, and there's so many layers to some of these games that at first glance, when you walk up to it, you don't know that. And like I said, sometimes for some of these games, it seems like you need like a PhD to figure them out. We're fortunate enough in the pinball world that we have a few people, one of them being Bowen Cairns, who actually lives in Salem, Mass. He's like one of the top pinball players in the entire world. And he puts out all these fantastic tutorial videos on YouTube under Papa Pinball, which was a pinball organization down in Pittsburgh that held like the biggest pinball tournament every year. That COVID actually did them into, which is unfortunate, but that tournament drew thousands of people from all over the world a year. Bowen puts out these tutorials. He makes it look so easy. Yeah. It's not. That's amazing. It's not. I learned something, Stomping Jen, about pinball. Yeah.
Oh, you did? Oh, okay.
Here's a stupid question that popped into my head as I was thinking about how you have 60 games in your building. Like, do these games generate a lot of heat? Does the space get hot, like when they're all running and being played?
It does a little bit. Thankfully, we have really good central air.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we would be in trouble. Yeah, it would be like a sauna in here.
Can I ask a question? Going back to these complex games, do you guys have them grouped on the floor by like difficulty level, or do you just like, is there like a rhyme and a reason that your placement on the floor, or?
There is, but we don't have them grouped together like that. So a lot of pinball tournaments, they use what are called banks, and a bank is usually a group of 4 games. And each tournament kind of runs them different. And sometimes they'll have a 4-game bank, which has a particular theme to it. Like it might be all like games that are themed to the ocean or underwater or something like that. You know what I mean? So we kind of came up with tournament banks. Some of them are themed, but we tried to come up with banks where we would have like 1 EM, 1 early solid state, 1 late solid state or early like DMD, and then like 1 newer game, like an LCD game, so that they're spaced out. A lot of the people that come here, a lot of them don't really care about the older games. So we didn't want all like the brand new, hotness all grouped together, where we're going to get a big crowd in one area and, have it be a little too congested. Our room is huge, but we're trying to avoid that kind of thing. So we took some time and tried to figure out like what banks that made sense to us once we start running tournaments again, and in big tournaments, where we can kind of keep people from all being in one spot and keep it a little more spread out and comfortable.
What's the pinball community like? So just really curious, is it a bunch of old guys like us, Dan, the late 40s, teenagers, younger than that, like somewhere in between? I'm really curious about that.
So we've been running tournaments every Friday night. We've been running what's called a knockout tournament. And last Friday, I want to say the oldest person that played in it was probably close to 70.
Wow. And
the youngest player we had was 9. So it really, like, we have people that we run the gamut. And we, before COVID, we were actually running a kids league on Saturday mornings. We were having kids as young as like 7 playing, like 7 to 13.
That sounds like a really great opportunity, actually, for mixing of the
intergenerational.
Is that what you call it?
Intergenerational.
Thank you. I was going to say mixing of the old and the young.
You don't want to say that.
No.
You want to say intergenerational.
Can you tell us a little bit more about your the weekly knockout events and like how those work? They're contests that happen every week.
Sure. So. We run what's called a knockout tournament on Friday nights. We're currently, we just started opening on Thursdays last week. And it's basically because Thursday night was our night to come here and try to work on stuff and clean games, because you have to do the regular daily maintenance. If you don't, they're just going to start breaking down, and they're going to break down more than they normally do already, So we said, well, screw it. Let's just start kind of opening our doors to the public. We'll see who shows up. There's some people that can't come on Fridays, and we can't make everybody happy. Right. And this is not a business to us. This is not our job. The 4 of us, we all have full-time jobs. We all have families. We all have responsibilities, So this was a hobby and a labor of love for us to put this place together. So the knockouts, when league's not in session, we run a knockout tournament. So the way the knockouts work out is everybody signs up. We actually have computer software called Match Play. And in Match Play, we put all of our players in when we're going to start the tournament. And we put all of our available games that are working and up to tournament standards in there. And the software shuffles everybody up, and it puts the people into groups of either 3 or 4 players. And it spits out what game you're going to play and the player order. So who goes first, second, third, fourth. So we print out score sheets for all the groups, and the groups go off and play their game. And when they're done with their game, they bring their score sheet back and we put it into the computer. If you're in a 4-player group, we don't really care about the actual scores. We care about how people placed. So if you're in a 4-player group, players 3 and 4, the bottom 2 scores, they get a strike. So, and kind of like baseball, 3 strikes, you're out.
Yeah.
So every knockout, you will always play at least 3 rounds. If you lose the first 3 rounds every time, then you're going to be knocked out at the end of round 3. That doesn't happen a lot. Usually you're going to kind of squeak through at least one of them or all of them, depending on skill level. But I've played against people who are way better than me, and I've beaten them in rounds. That's really the cool thing about pinball. Skill does matter. Skill matters. Yeah. And sometimes even just understanding the rule sets of a game matter. But the best player can have a horrible game. I mean, there's a little bit of luck involved all the time, a lot of skill, but a little bit of luck. And we had groups last week where the 9-year-old, it's his first time here. He came with his family. His older brother is friends with my oldest child, and the family came, and the little guy wanted to play in the knockout. So we're welcome for anybody to play, and he made it to like the 5th or 6th round.
Oh, wow.
Awesome. And he was coming, he was coming out on top of people who play here all the time, and they're really good players. But it's just, and it's great to see that, because pinball, it's kind of one of those things. It's having a resurgence, but it's one of those things you really don't think about. You really don't see too often out in the wild. I mean, my kids think this is like completely normal. We've had pinball machines in the basement, since they've been born, and they go over people's houses and they're like, "Where's the pinball?
Yeah.
What is this?"
My kids do the same thing with podcasting equipment.
Oh, stop it!
They're like, "What? You don't have a podcast studio in your home?" That's awesome. And this fall, you're going to be hosting. I don't quite know how to explain this. Season 24 of the New England Pinball League.
Yes, and we cannot wait. I'm telling you, competitive pinball is the best. The players are so good. They're so welcoming. You don't run into any assholes. Like it's not like a lot of other like competitive sports, I guess you can say. I mean, I know some people might kind of scoff at hearing like pinball being a competitive sport, but there is a high degree of skill involved in pinball, so we are so psyched to be part of season 24. So again, it's the New England Pinball League. Like I said, there's a bunch of different locations in New England, and it runs for 8 weeks. So you can play at any location each week. So you're not married to a single spot. The only thing they don't let you do is if you go and play your night at one spot and you do awful, you can't go try to make it up. You can't go try to do a repeat that same week.
No sneaky do-overs.
No, they don't let you do that.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the 8 weeks, they basically break down the top players. They break you down into divisions. So A division, B division, C division. And then the top 100 people total, 1/3. They go to do this huge tournament at a location. So right now, really in any PL, there's only 2 spots that can really handle like that number of players. We're one of them. The other one is Arcadia Bar, which is up in Portland, Maine.
Oh my God.
Is if you guys ever go up to Portland, Maine, you have to go to Arcadia.
Right.
It's some of the fucking coolest people in the world. And they during COVID, COVID shut them down too, because they were a bar, but they were also a pinball location at the same time. They're actually moving to a bigger and better spot. Like they, instead of going under, they're like, screw it. We're going to come back and we're going to be like, 3 times as badass. So they bought this building that is just massive, and they're planning on having a ton of games. And they're going to be right across the street from one of the greatest Chinese restaurants you could ever go to, Empire in Portland. If you guys get up there, Empire.
We're going in a couple. We're going in a couple of weeks.
Writing all this down.
Empire, go to Empire. I don't know if Arcadia is going to be open yet, because I think they're still in like the transition of moving from one spot to the other. If they're open, make sure you go. But Empire is the bomb.
All right, we got like a whole bunch of Portland.
Yeah, and I think Dan needs to expand Western Mass Pinball Club to also doing pinball event planning, because we're going to go do all of these things that he just suggested. We're going to go to Portland. We're going to like pinball tourism.
Yeah. There's a lot. There's quite a few spots up that way, and it's funny. Like the pinball, like I said, the pinball community. It's the greatest group of men and women that I have ever met. Everybody's just so cool, and everybody's out to like help each other out, and we all promote each other. You know, nobody's looking to like dominate the field of New England pinball. Everybody wants pinball to succeed, and they can't succeed without everybody kind of like you know having each other's back.
Does the league have like? Do you guys maintain like a map of all the locations? They
have it. They have all the locations listed on the website. I don't know if the website's been updated in a while. So some of the locations on there might not exist anymore. And like I said, places now that are finally opening back up because we've gotten to the vaccination levels and everything else, and we can try to live normal again, which is kind of a weird thing to even have to say, you know? But there's still a bunch of them that are coming back into the world and up and kicking, and they're trying to keep pinball alive.
I'm so glad you all survived in some of these other places. These tournaments, can people come and watch if they're not playing? Like, could Stomping Jen and I go and watch one of the? Could we come into one of the weekly knockout events, or could we go to the tournament when it happens in the fall?
Absolutely, absolutely. And on Fridays, we have plenty of people that come here on Fridays, and they're just casual players. They have nothing to do with the tournament. The tournaments are completely optional. So, we've been, before COVID, we were getting probably around 40-ish people on a Friday. And maybe a little over half would actually do the tournament. And the other people are just, going off and playing games and enjoying themselves and doing their thing.
Because I always think with my stomach, Stomping Jen, I have to ask Dan, do you have like snacks there for people?
Snacks.
or like seltzers or sodas or like?
So we have a water cooler here, but we also have a very large public fridge. So we let people bring food and beverages in.
Okay,
so
cool.
Let's bring your own food.
Yeah. Yep.
Do you charge admission? How does that work?
So we don't, since we're not really, like I said, we're the Fight Club of Pinball. We're not a business. We're a private collection of games that we open our doors to let the public come in and check out.
Got it.
We do have a donation box when you first walk in with some signage. It helps pay the rent. It helps keep the lights on. I mean, we didn't go into this to try to make money, or like, nobody's getting rich off pinball. I can tell you that much, And like I said, we all have lives and real jobs. So like, this is kind of a thing that we just donate a few hours of our time every week, because it's a labor of love, and because we love pinball, and we want to have the greatest pinball spot in Massachusetts. And I think if we don't, I'd be hard pressed to hear of a place that's better than this right now, because of just the sheer volume of games and just, diverse collection.
Yeah.
It's my dream,
And I can say this, Dan's not going to say it, but I am going to say this. So if you go to watch or play, bring a couple of bucks.
Seriously.
Don't be a scoundrel. Help.
I mean, I can just imagine that the electricity for running these machines alone is probably pretty high.
And I'm also going to point out, you can go to the Western Mass Pinball Club website. I'm going to put the link in the show notes, okay? And I'm going to post it on social media. I'm going to ask you all to go there, and there's a donate button. This operation Dan has told us about, all this good that this club is bringing to us all in terms of fun. This is fun stuff. Donate a couple of bucks. That's all I'm saying. Just go.
So sorry. Yeah. So you said it wasn't a business, right? So you're not even like a 501c3. It's like literally these are your machines. So like I can imagine too that you don't just want to open it up for people to just come and play sometimes. If like a quarters model, because you don't want the machines to break, maybe potentially, or
I mean, well, it's they're always going to break,
right?
And we're always going to do our best to try to keep everything up and running. because I mean, one of the main reasons we opened this place was because of the pinball league, and we love the pinball league, and we've, you know, Andy had his house has a spot,
Right,
and the rest of us, we wanted a place that the four of us could call our own, but that we could welcome people in and get people, you know,
Excited,
into the hobby of pinball. Not even ownership, but just you know, getting to experience. I think one of the greatest games, you know,
you're spreading your love.
It's so
the
good.
Pinball culture.
We're gonna come and
we love it.
We're gonna come and visit.
Oh, I totally want to go.
Once this,
you guys have to.
Yeah, once this COVID is over, I haven't told Stomping Jen this yet, Dan. I've got on my list to purchase a portable recording device, a more portable device, and we're gonna bring it, and we're gonna do an on-site follow-up interview, and we're gonna bring the love.
We need to cover this.
We're gonna do an immersive
24th season of.
Yeah, we're gonna cover the 24th season of the New England Pinball League. We're gonna come on site.
That would be awesome.
With permission, of course.
Yes,
we're not.
We're invading your space.
We would welcome it. It's great. We just want to get the word out and have people, you know, find out about us within reason. Like I said, we're the Fight Club of Pinball. We don't want 500 people showing up one day. You know?
Right.
You don't have to worry about it with this podcast.
Oh, stop!
We're not going to get thousands of people descending upon
Jesus
you.
Christ.
But we have a nice, sizable, local devoted following. That's all.
That's great.
I have a question. Is there like a holy grail of pinball machines? Like a pinball machine that somebody believes is sitting out there in some elderly person's barn under a tarp, like just waiting to be discovered?
I mean, there's a handful of games out there that there's only maybe a few in existence, and I guess you could call those the holy grails as far as just rarity and how much they're worth and everything else. I mean, there are pinball machines out there that I know of for a fact that have sold for well over $40,000 for a single game, because there's just maybe only 2 or 3 of them in the world. Yeah. So I mean, I don't think there's any one single game. But there are a few that, like I said, there's almost none of them left. Either like the game was about to go in production and the company closed down, or they just didn't think it was going to be financially feasible to run it. So so they didn't. I did a little bit of research on you guys as far as the podcast Facebook.
Oh no.
Well, it's the detective in me. I'm sorry. But I saw you guys were in Vegas recently.
Oh,
I don't know if you know this, but Vegas has the Pinball Hall of Fame.
Do they? We didn't know. We didn't spend very much.
We didn't know that.
Vegas.
Yeah, and they just moved to a brand new building, which is like it's crazy huge.
But they
have one of the games that's like one of like those Loch Ness Monster, you know, rarity pinball machines called Pinball Circus, which there's only like 3 of them, I think 2 or 3 of them in existence. They have one of them. It's the only place I got to play it. I went to Vegas years ago, and it's a cool experience. I don't think it's the greatest game in the world, but it's one of those things you'll never see it anywhere else, you know, in your life. So
I wish we had talked to Dan before we went.
That's all right. We would not have. We didn't have much time.
I know, but
to go check out the.
Maybe
pinball.
We would have checked it.
But now we'll have something. He's giving us all these travel tips.
Pinball tourism. I'm telling you.
In Asbury Park.
Yes.
My favorite
place on earth.
My favorite place on earth.
Go ahead.
They have a pinball. Place.
Oh, we'll check that out when we go again.
Do you know about this, Asbury Park?
I that might be Silver Ball.
Yes,
maybe?
Silver Ball. Yeah.
I know of them. I mean, no, there you go. See, I got the noise.
Yep.
I'll give you a travel tip. Asbury Park, place to go.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right, I have to ask this question. It's going to be the silliest question I asked this night. Have you ever listened to The Who's Pinball Wizard while playing pinball?
It's just Tommy.
I'm sure at some point it's been on when I've been playing a pinball machine, but it's one of those songs where like when you're into pinball,
Yeah.
It's like one of the last things you ever really want to hear.
I know. That's why I keep making bad jokes about it.
I know. I'm sorry. I had to ask that question.
We have a Spotify playlist that we play when we're open. It's not on there.
It's funny because I was obsessed when I was a kid with that musical.
Yeah.
I really loved it.
I know you love it.
I'm not a big fan. I can start singing for you, but I don't know if anybody can handle.
No, please don't. I'm not a fan of The Who. So
I know you hate that.
And I probably won't be a fan of The Who channeled through whatever this is. So, all right, Dan, we're going to transition to our last couple of questions. I know you've got to get going. So what's on the horizon for Western Mass Pinball? I know we've got the tournament coming up and hosting the New England Pinball League seasons. Anything else? What do you think? Are you thinking aspirationally about anything?
It's funny because when we first opened this spot, and like I said, it's a pretty big room and it's an old cafeteria space. When we first looked at this room, and I was completely not sold at all. I'm like, this is way too big. We're never going to be able to fill it. And one of the other guys, actually Andy, he's our head tech. He, thank God, because that kid he can see things. I'm a little more cynical. I'm probably the most cynical one of the four of us, but I kind of give that to I don't know, my profession and just all so I was a little more cynical going into this, that I didn't think it was going to work out. But he and the rest of the guys, they had this vision and they're like, oh no, trust me, it'll work. They're right. I tell them they're right all the time. We have gotten to the point now where we're over capacity.
Yeah,
we're out of room. We're trying to get friends to we have some guest games here for friends and stuff. And we're like, please take your games home because we don't have room anymore.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing them to begin with, because it helped us, start this place and get it filled. But it's like, guys, you got to take your games. We can't, we don't have room for our stuff anymore,
Yeah.
So I think for future, like I said, we're looking to get into maybe doing some repair classes in the fall. Obviously, we want to bring the kids league back because my kids, they love pinball. They are they're about to turn 7 and 12 this month, both. So they're they love it. My 12-year-old, he's become kind of a little Tommy himself, he knocked me out of the tournament last week. I was a little, I grounded him, but I mean, whatever. I guess but it's we want to get the younger generations involved, because the older people that come here, they lived through pinball. They lived through the heyday. It was part of their lives, albeit maybe a small part, but it was a part of their lives. Where these kids now, there are really there's some arcades out there, but they're not like they were, like when we were growing up in the 80s and 90s, where it was like the arcade. I don't know if you grew up in this area, right? But I didn't. I grew up in this area. So I grew up in Amherst and the Springfield area. So you had you had the arcade at the Hampshire Mall, and you had the arcade at the old Mountain Farms Mall, which doesn't exist anymore.
We played at that arcade
at the Fairfield Mall. They had the Just Fun and Dream Machine, and it's and the one at the Holyoke Mall in the basement. And I lived in these places, and I that was my childhood. These kids, they don't have that anymore. They have a Nintendo Switch in their house, or they have an Xbox, and it's not the same, because you used to go there with your friends, and it was more of a social thing than it was just playing video games. Now these kids sit down and they play Fortnite and Minecraft and whatever for hours, but there's not that social component's not there. And that's one of the best things about this place is we're trying to bring a social component back to an arcade type of feel, and get people interested in pinball, but also we want people to meet new people. Real quick story. We had a guy show up a few weeks ago, and he's never been here before. And when new people come in, the four of us, we take notice because we just go, oh, it's somebody new, So, I walk up to the guy, and I always ask people how they found out about us, because I want to know what's working. I want to know if it's our Facebook page, if they searched for it, or if it's, I post in 2 or 3 different kind of groups. I'll promote our spot, including like the Belchertown Community Forum, which is, I'm assuming, where you guys saw it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And so, because we're trying to keep it small, but we want people, we're in Palmer, we're in the Belchertown area. I live in Belchertown, so we want people in this area, if they're interested in that kind of thing, we want them to know about us. So this guy shows up, and I'm like, oh. I always ask people, how'd you find out? So he's like, oh, how'd you find out about us? And this guy's probably, I would say he's got to be late 50s. And he goes, so I'm an Uber driver, and I picked up this guy last night at a bar on Boston Road. I can't remember the name of it. It might be like Turtle Pond or something, right? Yeah. On Boston Road. And they have a pinball machine there. They've always had like a single pinball machine there. And it must be like somebody that has a route and puts games out. So one of our regulars I know goes there and will play pinball occasionally if we're not open. So this Uber driver picked up our regular, and he's driving him home, and who happens to live like a half mile from the club. And he's like, oh, how was it in there tonight? And, our regular's going, oh, it's great. Had a beer, played some pinball. And the Uber driver's like, pinball? And he's like, yeah, they have a pinball machine, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, I love pinball. I used to own a game like 20 years ago.
Oh my God.
And he's like, oh, well, they're driving by the complex at this point. He's like, oh, well, there's a pinball club right in there, and they're open Friday nights, and they have like 60 games. And the guy came the next night, and he's like, I kind of thought he was kidding, because we're driving by and you're looking at this old factory, and there's, it's like, there can't be this awesome, pinball spot, but
that's
there
awesome.
is. We're here.
So cool.
That's such a good story.
That is such a good story.
I love it.
So it's funny. We had people show up before COVID who are like, yeah, I was in like this hairdresser, and they were talking about this pinball place in Palmer, and we thought they were crazy. I figured, I'll drive over there and see if they're like, if it's real. And yeah, it's funny how people just kind of word of mouth and find us.
That's awesome. Dan, as we're wrapping up, is there anything else you wanted to tell us to make sure that you wanted to talk about, or?
I don't think so. Okay. I think it's just, if people in the area, if they're interested in pinball, if they're looking just to meet new people, everybody here they're so welcoming, and it's so much fun. And we want to get people interested. I'm telling, competitive play is a blast. You don't need to be a pinball wizard to play with us competitively and do well. And it's, the more you play, the better you're going to get. It's just like anything else. Mm-hmm. So
we're going Stomp and Jam. We're going to check it out, and we're going to report back. All right, last 2 questions, and I promise these are easy. All right, we know you spend a lot of your free time doing pinball. I think we've established this. What else do you like to do for fun? Like, how do you reconnect? How do you get back to yourself that doesn't involve pinball? Could be, hiking, jogging, working out, anything like that. We're just curious.
I have a road bike. So myself and some coworkers and friends, we'll go occasionally out to like the Belchertown Trail and do the to Northampton and back, or hit the Westfield Trail. That's a beautiful trail. I really enjoy doing that. I like the road bike. I don't like really riding on the real roads, because it's the drivers these days are just, I've seen so many horrible things in my career, and people not paying attention. So that kind of scares me a little bit, but that's a good thing. I'll be honest, I don't have a lot of free time. My job is very consuming, even off hours, because I work in an investigative branch. And so you always have stuff looming, so I work in a homicide unit. So it's so it's intense, and it's always, I can't wait to retire. Let's put it that way. Well, it's just like, it's going to be this huge weight off my shoulders. But bike, if it's not pinball, there have been times where I've been here so much that I actually kind of like grew to resent it a little bit. I think all four of us have hit that point at one point or another, just because it's a lot to keep on top of with all the games and everything else. But like I said, it's a labor of love, and we love it. So besides pinball, I would say the biking, and obviously spending time with my wife and two kids. You know, they're everything to me. So.
Okay. Thanks for answering that. Last question. If you listen to the Cakes by Pip podcast, you might know this question is coming.
I do. Hell yeah.
All right. And I asked this, you can take this any way you want. I've got to cue up the music so I can lead you down the right path. All right.
Oh my gosh. You just said any way.
That's a lie. I always want people to tell me something paranormal. That's just.
I've been dreading this question.
Oh my god!
All right, I'm not going to draw out the torture, Dan. I'm going to ask it. What have you experienced that you cannot explain?
Oh boy. See, and I was dreading it because I've been thinking about how I could even answer it without it being too dark. You know, because I don't like the paranormal, anything like that. I don't have anything, you know?
Yeah, that's cool.
That's okay.
So I guess the only thing I can't explain is, and not to get, like I said, not to get too dark, but just doing what I've done for as long as I've done it. I mean, I've seen things that I don't know why they've happened. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like I said, I'm in homicide, and I work for a pretty large department, and we have a lot of incidents that happen, and we've had stuff where it's just like you get there and you're just like you can't even explain how it could even get to how it got there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I said, that question has been lingering in my head all day, and I'm like, how the hell am I going to answer that?
You gave a great answer, and thank you for going out on a limb and answering it. And I'm glad you have this pinball that you can retreat to, you know, once in a while to get away from that work. So
yeah, this is I think this is probably one of the few things that actually keeps me, like, you know, sane.
All right, Dan Regner, I have to thank you. This was a really enjoyable conversation.
Yes,
I loved learning about this. Like you said, it's like right here in our backyard, and we never knew about it.
Yeah.
And I'm excited for people to hear about the Western Mass Pinball Club, and to be able to hopefully go check it out and even support it.
Be immersed in pinball culture.
All right.
We have to go out on Tommy. No, I'm just kidding.
No, we can't.
I'm kidding. I'm joking.
I've already been subject to one takedown order because we played and our podcast host threatened us that if we get any more, we're in trouble. So no, you can't even hum it, Stomping Jen.
What?
We played some song on our podcast.
Okay.
We got a nasty gram.
You got a strike.
Yeah, we got a strike. So we have to behave.
That's
all right.
All right.
Dan, thank you so much. Really,
this
was great.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you so much,
listeners.
Thank you, guys.
Yep, thank you, Dan. Listeners, thank you for your continued support and listening.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. We do love you. Thank you for saying that, Stomping Jen.
Okay.
All right, Dan. We're just going to go around. We like to say bye now. It's our. What do you say?
Our
signature sign off.
Yes.
So I'll let you do the honors of giving the first bye now.
All right. Bye now.
All right, Stomping Jen, you're up.
Why do you get to go last?
All right, I'll do it. It's fine. I don't have to. I will step aside and I will go now.
Believe you.
All right.
All right. Bye now.
Okay. Bye now, everyone. Bye now.
This world of ours, ever growing smaller, must avoid becoming a community of dreadful fear and hate. Those who have freedom will understand also its heavy responsibility. That all who are insensitive to the needs of others will learn charity and that the sources, scourges of poverty, disease, and ignorance will be made disappear from the earth, and that in the goodness of time, all peoples will come to live together in a peace guaranteed by the binding force of mutual respect and love. I shall never cease to do what little I can to help the world advance along that road.